I can't remember if I cried when I read about his widowed bride, but something touched me deep inside the day the Joker died.
Because it's Thursday.
Hello, Watchtower Database, and welcome back to The Vanishing Point, the only bi-weekly YouTube show that dissects small chunks of the DCAU timeline to give you the answers to questions you never thought to ask. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I think Return of the Joker might be the best Batman movie of all time. Mask of the Phantasm, step aside. Dark Knight, just another cop drama. Lego Batman? Okay, maybe. Seriously though, I still remember the first time I watched this movie. And that scene where Terry returns to the Batcave only to find Bruce has been poisoned with Joker toxin still gets me every time. But of course, the most impactful scene of this movie is probably the death of Joker. This scene is perhaps one of the most iconic Batman stories of all time. We all know how it plays out. Harley dresses up as a damsel in distress to try to trap Robin. Robin unwittingly falls into the trap, and then over the next 3 weeks, the Joker and Harley work on torturing and brainwashing him until there's no Robin left, but just a Joker Jr. When Batman and Batgirl finally find them all, a fight ensues, and it ends leaving Tim with a gun in his hands to decide whether to shoot the Joker or Batman. Or maybe it was the Joker accidentally electrocutes himself. For those of you who aren't in the know, the production cycle of this film came in the wake of the Columbine High School massacre, which led to a nationwide conversation about the overuse of graphic violence in films and games that were targeted to younger audiences. As a result, before heading to release in December of 2000, Return of the Joker ended up heavily edited, and the original version didn't end up seeing the light of day until almost a year and a half later in April of 2002. But the differences between the cut and the uncut versions aren't the only changes that have been made to this movie in the almost 2 decades since its initial release. However, rather than add these changes to later releases of the film like it was some sort of special edition of Star Wars,
Touchdown Republic!
most of the other changes were all added throughout other DCAU material. And so if you're watching Return of the Joker as a standalone experience, you may never get the full picture of what's happening in this scene. So today we will be tackling what really happened when the Joker died. Perhaps the most widely known addition to Joker's demise is that the technology that he used to transform Tim came from Cadmus. While the organization wasn't formally introduced until Justice League Unlimited, this government-sanctioned metahuman deterrent program had roots that, according to General Hardcastle, spanned back decades. Most notably, of course, in the form of Volcana from Superman the Animated Series episode Where There's Smoke, and the Royal Flush Gang from the original Justice League cartoons episode Wild Cards.
That Volcano woman, she was one of ours. Same with those freaks the Joker made up like playing cards.
Now, any longtime fan of the channel knows that we are very careful to not spoil anything from the DCAU finale epilogue. In fact, we're so serious about it that we've put hashtag keep epilogue a secret on a t-shirt. So if you haven't watched the episode yet, feel free to skip to the time code that's gonna show up on the screen here. But for the rest of you, I think we've given them enough time to skip.
Maybe you dug up some of that old Cadmus nanotech. Used it to have my genes rewritten to match yours.
That technology's been illegal for over 40 years.
Didn't stop the Joker from using it on Tim Drake.
Seeing as the Joker is completely absent from Justice League Unlimited due to a phenomenon that the fans have what the fans have come to dub the Bat Embargo, the only time we ever see Joker in a Cadmus facility is in the flashbacks of the aforementioned episode Wild Cards, which happened shortly before the episode. I say shortly because, well,
they were so grateful for their freedom, they've stuck to me like flypaper ever since.
And since we've never seen the Royal Flush Gang before, it only makes sense that these events, as well as the theft of the Cadmus technology, happened sometime after the events of the Joker's last appearance in Injustice for All. While this may not seem like a big deal on its own, it's really cool to see Return of the Joker retroactively attached to what is one of the biggest storylines in the entire DCAU. And it shows that despite the use of character models from the new Batman adventures, that Bruce Timm and co were actively trying to clean up continuity by pushing the death of the Joker further down the timeline. Which brings me to my next point.
But then we remembered you always had a few spare kids hanging around, so we borrowed one.
I've done an episode on Robin's age before, so I'll keep this brief. When first introduced in the new Batman adventures, Tim Drake was confirmed to be a 13-year-old kid. And since the crew arguably didn't have Justice League on their brain at the time that Return of the Joker was made, he still shows up in this movie looking pretty young. However, once Justice League came around and the Joker was confirmed to still be alive, this started stretching the fabric a little bit thin. With returns to the DCAU, such as Batman and Harley Quinn and Justice League vs. the Fatal Five, that not only confirm that the Joker is still around, but that also the Bat family knows the whereabouts of Harley Quinn, this pushes the film's placement many years later than was originally intended. There are multiple different theories to work with here. While I personally believe that Tim has just been retconned to be an older teenager in this scene, Bruce Timm, through his quotes about Batman always being in his 30s, seems insistent that the characters of the DCAU never age, except for when they do. Others have used the workaround that Tim is actually 13 years old in the movie and has retroactively been made younger throughout the new Batman adventures. And a select few subscribe to a theory where Joker swiped the Cadmus technology and died before the events of Justice League, and then what we're seeing in Justice League is a clone or a reanimated corpse, or maybe it's Tim. I don't know, that's a whole topic for a different video. But since I brought up Batman and Harley Quinn, Harley is a good guy now, kinda? One of the most consistent complaints that I've seen about Batman and Harley Quinn is that in retrospect, it makes Harley so much worse in Return of the Joker. We've seen her join the side of good in this film, get her life back on track, and even get her own TV show. And yet here we are a few years later and she's back with the Joker again and torturing Tim. And while this is certainly a valid criticism of the film, which Bruce Timm didn't seem to think too much about.
Did this come before or after the Batman Beyond thing? I don't know.
I think there's more to it than meets the eye. In the film's follow-up tie-in comic, Harley actually runs into Task Force X. Led by Amanda Waller, an offer is put out for Harley to join the team of her own free will. But when Harley turns down this offer, Waller specifically tells her, "I know you're kind, Quinn. You need the adrenaline rush of this sort of life, and we handle problems the Justice League is squeamish about. Inside of 6 months, you'll slip up, do something insane, and be back behind bars. Then I'll have you for my task force anyway." As you may recall from our video on this film's timeline, Batman and Harley Quinn takes place in the fall of 2003. And lo and behold, the Batman, Harley, and Ivy miniseries starts in early 2004. And you guessed it, ends with Harley back in Arkham. While it's likely a huge coincidence that this lined up with Amanda Waller's mentioned 6-month time period, we do see Harley back in Arkham in Justice League vs. the Fatal Five. So when Bruce Timm said,
"It's odd because the last time we saw these two, Harley was a good guy,"
it's really not all that odd. The puzzle pieces were lined up for this already. In fact, Tim isn't the only one who's been working on good guy Harley for the DCAU. Just last year, Paul Dini finished up his run on the book Harley Loves Joker. While seemingly set earlier in the timeline, the final issue features our Harley having a realization of who she could be if she let go of the Joker. While she ultimately turns down that path of self-discovery for herself at that time in favor of holding on to what what she has, one can't help but wonder if maybe this was the turning point to get the character away from the Joker in the DCAU altogether. Now, this retcon is huge for the implications of what we see in Return of the Joker. As I already stated, despite Harley having become a good guy for the most part, she did end up back in Arkham. And since we know that Amanda Waller is a woman of her word, this sets up Harley to be on Task Force X as early as 2004. And we know that any member of the group in the DCAU has a 5-year commitment.
5 years. You sign up for missions like this for 5 years.
This would mean that her time with the squad isn't up until 2009, and Return of the Joker falls into that time period. So we can assume that this return to the Joker is not an act of character regression, but because she is part of a Task Force X op. But why would Amanda Waller send Harley back to the Joker? Because she is the head of Cadmus, and Joker stole Cadmus tech. In fact, this would also explain how Harley survived her fall and went on to live a peaceful life afterwards. She was extracted by Amanda Waller and put into hiding. It all makes sense. But how would Batgirl not be aware? Besides Critters, Over the Edge is probably my favorite episode of the new Batman adventures. So when I finally got around to reading the Batman Beyond tie-in series that started in 1999, I was beyond excited to realize that that episode had implications for the future of Barbara Gordon. Issue number 13 of the run featured Barbara incapable to carry out the duties of police commissioner, all because of flashbacks due to Scarecrow's fear toxin. According to this issue, she would have a relapse into these fear-induced hallucination every 4 to 5 years. But the first one happened 3 years after the events of Over the Edge. With the new Batman adventures taking place between 1999 to 2000, this places her second flashback sometime between the years of 2006 to 2008, which is very close to the same window of time that we've already pinned down Return of the Joker to occur in. In fact, there's a striking parallel between Harley's fall in this film and the end of Over the Edge that has Batman and Jim Gordon falling over the side of a building in Barbara's hallucination. Which all raises the question, was the reason that Harley's body was never found because she actually never fell? Admittedly, because of the large time window in which it could have happened, blaming Batgirl losing Harley on the fear toxin flashbacks is a bit looser of a theory than the other stuff we've already covered here. And it isn't much of an actual retcon since this issue did come out before Return of the Joker did. But we're working in a world where Harley may have had a relationship with the Scarecrow before ever finding the Joker. So the implications of a bookend to her relationship with the Joker that involves the Professor of Fear unwittingly being her savior just seemed too poetic not to mention. Of course, with comics on the mind, there's one more thing that I need to mention before the end of the video, or else there will probably be a couple angry commenters. While Earth 12 is arguably not the canon future of the DCAU, a subject that we plan to cover 50 years from now, whenever now is, there's no denying that when Kyle Higgins and Derek Friedolf took over the writing duties for this Earth, the history of the DCAU did sort of impact the history of this world to a degree. As a result, for better or worse, we ended up seeing the fallout of the Joker's death for that world. In Justice League Beyond's flash drive, we see Barbara carrying Tim back to the Batmobile moments after Joker's death, while her father, Jim Gordon, and Batman are burying him in an unmarked grave. Barbara finally attempts to reveal herself to her father, who leaves the scene saying that he doesn't want to have any more personal attachments to the situation. After Jim leaves, Bruce suggests building a vault of sorts to keep the bodies of deceased villains. Barbara tells him that she'll help him with that, but after that, she's done with the crime fighting life and is going to pursue a legitimate career in the police force. Interestingly enough, during the exchange, Bruce actually brings up the events of Over the Edge and asks if that's why Barbara's quitting. So it seems that my Scarecrow theory might not actually be that far off. Kyle Higgins took us a bit further in time in Mark of the Phantasm to a week after the Joker's death. We see Barbara return her Batgirl outfit to Bruce, and for all of you who remember all of the hinting to the two of them having a relationship throughout the Batman Beyond show, Barbara effectively ends that here as well. Meanwhile, Dick returns to Gotham from Bloodhaven, leading to him and Barbara rekindling their relationship. However, 3 weeks in, Barbara takes a pregnancy test only to find that she is 7 weeks pregnant. If it took someone trained by the world's greatest detective 7 weeks to figure that out, honestly, I just feel bad for the women in Alabama and Georgia, Louisiana, Missouri, Ohio, Mississippi, Kentucky, Iowa, North Dakota. I'm sure you get where I'm going with this. Bruce tells Barbara that she should be the one to tell Dick, but instead goes ahead and does it himself behind her back, all under the guise of trying to make sure that Dick knows before doing something rash like proposing. This revelation leads to Dick attacking Bruce, but while all that's happening, Barbara unsuccessfully attempts to stop a mugging on her way home, which ends up leading to her having a miscarriage. In the previous story arc, The Batman, we get a little bit more insight into Dick's side of things and see that in fact he was actually planning on proposing and discussed his plan with none other than the Flash, Wally West. His plan being to attach the ring to the first ever Batarang that he had given her, all the way back in Batman the Animated Series episode, Shadow of the Bat. However, following his altercation with Bruce, Dick and Barbara ended up going their separate ways, leading to open the door for her relationship with Adam West. Opening the door for her relationship to begin with Sam Young. And that's it. That's all the retcons that I could find for this one scene. And man, were there a lot of them. Personally, I feel like this ends up putting a whole different light on the entire thing. Now that we've got that all laid out though, it's time for the question of the day. What is your opinion on retcons? Should they exist? After an author puts a story out, should they not touch it anymore? Are there some retcons you love or some you hate? I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, and honestly, I feel like this is gonna spark a fun conversation. As always, leave your comments down under in the Australia box. Before I go, I wanna thank all of these lovely people for supporting us on Patreon this month. If your name's not on the list and you wanna get it on there, you can head over to patreon.com/DCAU Watchtower, and for a pledge of as low as $1 a month, we'll plop it on in there. While you're there though, be sure to check out the other tiers of pledging. We've got other stuff that we offer, such as live stream hangouts, voting and polls for upcoming episodes, merch, custom artwork, and more. Speaking of merch, if you want to get yourself a t-shirt but don't have the funds to sign up as a monthly patron, you can always go to our store on Teespring, where we've got t-shirts, hoodies, phone cases, and a couple other goodies over there. So if you're interested in that, you can find the link down below in the description box. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to go ahead and hit that button so that I'll see you in 2 weeks. However, if you just can't wait that long, you can always follow me on Twitter at Mattie Washburn, or chat with me and some of the other Watchtower Database crew in the Discord channel, which you can find the link for below as well. I've also just recently started a weekly DCAU book club live stream on my personal channel. So if you're interested in that, you can find me in the comments below, find my personal channel. We'll have live streams over there. Right now they're scheduled for Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But as I said, if you need updates on anything, Twitter, Discord, that's where I'll be. As always, I've been Mattie Washburn. This has been The Vanishing Point, and we'll continue to stay those things so long as you continue to stay you. I love you guys, and I just hope that you spread that love around the world this week. Bye.